The Senate now has before it for final consideration Senate Bill number 1183. The Secretary will read the bill.
In the Senate, Senate Bill 1183 by State Affairs Committee, an act relating to the Fetal Heartbeat Preborn Child Protection Act.
Madam President.
Senator Lodge.
Madam President, I ask unanimous consent that further reading of Senate Bill 1183 be dispensed with, and the journal show it has been read for the third time at length, section by section, and placed before the Senate for final consideration.
You've heard the unanimous consent request. Is there an objection? Hearing none, it is so ordered, and Senator Lodge is recognized to open debate.
Thank you very much, Madam President. Good Senators, you have before you at this time for your consideration Senate Bill 1183. And this legislation would provide legal precedents in Idaho law upholding that abortion could not be performed in the state after a heartbeat is determined by a medical professional. The advancement in medical technologies have taken huge steps in saving the lives of preborn children and pregnant women. When my children were preborn, a stethoscope was used to hear the heartbeat. Close to delivery, an X-ray could be used to determine the position of the baby if there were problems. Today, the advancement of ultrasound technology can show preborn babies, and one can see and hear their heartbeats at a very early stage. Through this technology, you can follow the development of babies, increasing the likelihood of a healthy baby at delivery. 6 years ago, about this time, I was honored to see my daughter's twins at about 8 weeks, and I was able to hear and see the heartbeats of my grandbabies and follow their development to birth. At about 12 to 15 weeks, Juliana could be seen sucking her thumb, while Declan seemed content just to watch his sister. Pressure in certain areas would cause the babies to move away from that place. With this amazing technology, we have advanced from the days of guessing about the development of a child and the medically determination that the presence of a heartbeat is a sign of life, or life exists at the time a heartbeat is detected. This legislation would assert a compelling interest in protecting the right to life of every preborn child with a detectable heartbeat. Senators, this legislation has a trigger mechanism that would make it effective upon a positive decision of any federal appellate court in the nation. This trigger mechanism is important as it is a way to curtail expenditures of state resources defending the law in court before it's ruled upon in other states that it's being considered in now or is law. Now, if you would look with me through this legislation, you will note that Section 188701 are definitions that are used in this legislation. 188702 states that the life of each human being begins at fertilization, and unborn children have an interest in life, health, and well-being that should be protected. Section 2 states that the common law definition of death is the irreversible cessation of the circulatory and respiratory function. This model law has been adopted by numerous medical and ethical organizations, including the National Conference of Commissioners on Uniform State Laws, and our former Senator Bart Davis was a member of that commission, the American Medical Association, and almost all states. 3, legal standards and the medical community at large affirm that a consistent human heartbeat, independent of life support, is a core determining factor in establishing the legal precedence of human life in a full range of circumstances for young and old alike. Sections 4 through 7 clarifies biologically the viability of a preborn child when a heartbeat is detected. And 8 determines a compelling interest in protecting the life of a preborn child that has a heartbeat which is rhythmical and without pause and indicates the presence of a unique life with DNA and a distinct identity. It is independent and distinct from the mother's and is worthy to be protected. In 188703, A person who intends to perform or induce an abortion must determine if there is the presence of any fetal heartbeat except in the case of a medical emergency. The definition of a medical emergency is in 1887-01, number 5. The medical condition would necessitate the immediate abortion to avert the death or serious risk of substantial and irreversible impairment of a major bodily function. The information of the gestational age, method used to determine the heartbeat, date, and time of the test and its results must be recorded in the woman's medical records. In 1887-04, these are the exceptions in this legislation, which include the medical emergency just described, or in the case of rape or incest. Rape or incest must be reported to law enforcement by the woman, or if she is a minor, by her parents or guardian, and a copy of the report must be given to the person who is to perform the abortion. 1887-05 states the penalties for violations of this legislation, and they are consistent with other pro-life laws in the state of Idaho. 1887-06 is the trigger mechanism that I just spoke about earlier in this legislation, and it does not conflict with the effectiveness of Section 18622 Idaho Code, which was passed last year and signed by the gentleman on the second floor. In 1887-07 is a civil action that any woman on whom an abortion is performed in violation of this chapter may recover in a civil action all damages available under Idaho law if the person intentionally, knowingly, and recklessly violated the provisions of 1887-03 and 1887-04 Idaho Code, which I just before spoke about. And 1887-08 is a severability clause. Good senators, medical science and humanity has taken huge steps in life-saving measures for all human beings, young and old. When I was pregnant with my first child, teachers could only teach in the classroom till the 5th month. I was the first teacher in the Caldwell School District to teach full term. I was also back in the media center 2 weeks afterwards. Before that time, you could not come back during that school year. It seems so discriminatory in today's world. We have progressed in the rights for pregnant women. We have progressed in medical technology. We have a multitude of services for those women in crisis pregnancies. Those services in the past were difficult to find. So many of the women who have spoken about their regrets after having abortion say they felt at the time they had no other choice. They did not know what to do or where to find compassionate help. You will see on your desks a list of some of the services available for those crisis pregnancies. Some services extend 18 months after the birth of the child. With the availability of these services and the rights women have in today's world, a woman can give birth and continue her life goals. Encouraging life might make it possible for 2 million families who want to adopt the opportunity to raise a child. As society, we must make known the services for crisis pregnancies. These sources provide practical assistance, medical care, financial and social support, and counseling to mothers. Faith-based organizations, adoption agencies, churches, and community organizations are also ready to stand in the gap and provide support and care for women with unexpected pregnancies, and also continue to protect the children throughout their young lives. There are choices for crisis pregnant women. Let us help them achieve their goals for themselves and the life for their unborn child. Help make widely known that ending the life of a child does not need to happen in this state. Senators, it is a humane act to protect those who are unable to speak for themselves, that they are also entitled to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And with that explanation, Madam President, debate is open.
Is there further debate?
Madam President.
Senator Burgoyne.
Thank you, Madam President. I rise in opposition to the legislation. It's been my view for a very long time, probably since I was a child, that the differing views on abortion come down to differing religious views. Now, this provision, or this legislation, has a provision in it relating to rape, and it's a purported exception. I'm not going to delve into detail about why I think that exception really is ineffective in this legislation, but I am going to say this. When I was 9 or 10 years old, the issue of abortion came up in my household, and my mother was giving some of my family's hard-earned money, and there wasn't a lot of it, to support unwed mothers through, I believe, the Salvation Army. And I asked her about that, and one thing led to another, and I asked about rape. And she took the view, number one, that she could never have an abortion. She took the view, number two, that she wanted to help these young ladies who were pregnant. But she took the view, when it came to rape, that that was a life that God never meant to be. And that stuck with me, and it sticks with me today. These differing religious views can only be resolved in our hearts, in our minds. They cannot be resolved in a legislature, in my view. This is an interesting piece of legislation because obviously there are people who have differing views on when life begins. Let me call your attention to Genesis 2:7. Quote, "And the Lord God formed man of the dust of the ground and breathed into his nostrils the breath of life, and man became a living soul." Man became a living soul only when the breath of life was breathed into him. And so there are those who believe that life begins upon birth, when a baby first breathes. Now, I'm not here today to tell you that that's correct or incorrect. What I am here to say today is people have different religious views regarding these issues. And if there is one thing that the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of Idaho are abundantly clear about, is that this legislature may not resolve those religious views. This legislature may not choose one religious view over another and enshrine it in the law. I'd also say this. Roe versus Wade and its progeny are often criticized for inventing a right that it is claimed does not exist. I would like to call the body's attention to the 9th Amendment of the United States Constitution. Rights not specified or enumerated in the Constitution are retained by the people, according to the 9th Amendment. Now, what does that mean? That means the right need not be found in the Constitution in order for the right to exist. And indeed, jurisprudence recognizes, pursuant to the 9th Amendment, the right to privacy, the right with respect to reproduction, the education of children, the right to utilize contraception. So we have presented by this bill a situation where we are being called upon, in my estimation, to resolve a religious controversy, and we are doing so in contravention not only of the First Amendment, but we are doing it in contravention of rights that are retained by the people pursuant to the 9th Amendment. And so, Madam President, for those reasons, I will not be supporting the bill today. Thank you.
Is there further debate? Senator Zito.
Madam President, excuse us just a minute while we do a little work here. Thank you, Madam President. I would like to rise today to speak in favor of the bill. Bills like this really tear me. I find it difficult to qualify when life starts, when I believe truly that life begins at the moment of conception and should end at natural death. But that being said, I think it's important that we do everything in our power to save even one life when the opportunity presents itself. If I had my choice, the taking of an innocent preborn life at any stage, at any time, would be deemed illegal in the state of Idaho. In our Constitution, it states that abortion is illegal. If someone murders a pregnant woman, they can be charged with 2 counts of homicide. So that for me, creates kind of a conflict in my mind. But until that day comes when the legislature of the state of Idaho will stand up and take that stand, that life begins at the moment of conception, that it doesn't matter how you're conceived, that every human being at the moment of conception is formed perfectly in the image of God, no matter how that took place, no matter how that happens, then I will support bills like this with that hope that maybe even one life will be saved. The Constitution doesn't say that life is a religious value. The Constitution tells us that life is a gift from God, that it is a right given to us by our Creator, and it is our job to protect that. Thank you for your time.
Is there further debate?
Madam President,
Senator Robbie.
to debate in opposition to the bill.
Senator has the floor.
So I was reticent to speak up today because I do think this is an incredibly emotional and divisive issue. We just took a break and got to have this uncomfortable conversation, and I hope that our differences on this don't pull us apart on some more practical matters, as this issue tends to do. And I respect that some of you hold the issue of abortion close to your heart. Maybe according to your religion or your conscience or your morality, your upbringing, whatever it is. I do think it's important to recognize that we all have different belief systems and values and backgrounds, and I respect that in you all. But for me and for a lot of my constituents as well, and I think women across the state of Idaho, this is not an issue of morality that the government should decide on. But one which we should provide women the opportunity to decide for themselves. So I have seen over the last couple months how this body is reticent to get involved in decisions that affect private parties, even where our motions tell us that certain decisions might be more ethical or moral. And I don't see this issue any differently. I believe that this should be a woman's decision for how she spends the next 9 months or the rest of her life, potentially without adequate support, time, or finances. Understand there are some resources out there providing 18 months of support, but this is 18 years or more. And women also should be able to take into account any health issues they have. I know women who have had to make this incredibly difficult choice, and it's not an issue they take lightly. It's something they wrestle with, and it's a personal and moral decision that sits with them for their entire lives. This is never something women want to do. It happens sometimes, but ultimately whether or not the decision to abort an embryo is their decision, their life, their body, their morality, not ours as a government entity. So I just want to say that I differ with you on where the morality of the choice lies, and I think that's okay. I hope you think that's okay too. Morality is a difficult thing to debate here as a government body. But where we should all stand united is behind the law. And I have been reminded many times here about the importance of separating our morality, personal morality, from the law at times. This issue is no longer in our jurisdiction as a state government to try to litigate as an issue of morality. This issue has been fully litigated over the last 50 years, and the law has been set. I do understand that the bill has a trigger provision which essentially delegates our authority to a federal court. But that trigger provision doesn't automatically make this legal. It just sets us up for future lawsuits and other rounds of litigation, which we will surely lose. This body, by my count so far, since 2006, 15 years ago, the legislature has spent $598,000 in taxpayer dollars litigating the issue of abortion. Roe versus Wade was decided 50 years ago, and at this point in 2021, I think it's time we focus on the real issues facing our community, issues where government intervention is gravely needed. We, as stewards of our law and taxpayer dollars, need to make sure we work within our role as government, make sure the laws we pass are legally sound, and this one is not. Putting in a restriction on abortion at 6 weeks of pregnancy at a time when most women don't even know they're pregnant flies right in the face of the law. Most states many states have tried to do this to ban abortion before what Roe versus Wade legally defined as viability. 6-week bans on abortion have been struck down in North Carolina just 2 weeks ago. That was struck down. Kentucky, Mississippi, North Dakota, Iowa, Ohio, and Tennessee. This law is no different from those, and it does, without a doubt, prevent abortion before viability, that scientific term that's been debated and discussed in our courts over the last 50 years. Viability, as you know, occurs at a later process than the development of what is medically defined as a fetal pole in this bill of 4 millimeter thickening in an embryo. Our laws clearly state that the government cannot intervene in a woman's choice to have an abortion and what to do with her body, prevent an abortion before that legal term viability occurs. That term, which has been litigated and decided on over 50 years of litigation. So I think it's important and legal that abortion remain a safe and medical legal procedure for a woman to consider when she needs it. Thank you.
Is there further debate?
Madam President.
Senator Den Hartog.
Thank you, Madam President, fellow senators. First of all, I want to thank the senator from 11 for bringing this piece of legislation. This is an important policy statement for the state of Idaho to make. We come here, and one of the things I believe that we're charged with is protecting life and demonstrating that we value it and think it's important. I may have shared on the floor before. I was trying to go back in my memory, and I think perhaps that I have, of some of the greatest days in my life. 3 of the greatest were when I heard the heartbeat of my own children. And it didn't really seem real until that moment. You knew, you had the positive pregnancy test, you knew it was real, you knew it was there. There was probably already gaining weight, I don't know. But that moment when I heard the heartbeat, and similar to the senator from 11, they do it different now, even from when my last child was born almost 10 years ago. Roe v. Wade was decided 50 years ago. Things have changed. They continue to change. We have medical advancements. We learn, and our policy changes because of those advancements. We're in a dynamic process. We know so much more. We have so much more available to us now. And that's why these policy choices come back before us. We have the overarching task and charge to protect life and to show that we as a state value it. And we do that in many different ways. We've done that in many, many different kinds of legislation this session. We do it by trying to prevent harm. We do it by trying to promote good. And sometimes it's in policy statements like this that says, when you hear this heartbeat, this is the life that we are going to protect. And I would encourage you to support this piece of legislation, and I'm thankful that we get to debate it today. Thank you, Madam President.
Is there further debate? Senator Hyder.
Thank you, Madam Chair, Madam President. Good senators, I didn't intend to speak today, but you know, I just celebrated Easter with our sons and daughters and 28 grandchildren, 4 of whom are adopted. Those little adopted boys didn't have a choice of whether they were aborted or whether they were not aborted. And now that they're part of our family, we love them just as much as we do any of our children, our grandchildren that were brought into our family through normal processes. They run, they play, they hunt Easter eggs, they jump on the tramp. They have so much fun. They're so lively. They're so excited about life. I cannot imagine one of those 4 little boys not being part of our family because of a decision that someone made maybe many years ago. They're all just tykes. The oldest one I think is 10. But I can't imagine not having them grow up in our family. And I'm so grateful that a mother somewhere chose to keep those children in her womb, have them born naturally, and then even though she couldn't, for whatever reason, raise them and teach them, she allowed them to be adopted by my son and his sweet wife. And it makes such a difference to have that relationship with all these grandchildren, and especially, I'd say especially, the 4 that might not have had the opportunity to come to earth, had a mother somewhere decided to abort them. So that's a little different perspective on the subject, but I certainly am grateful for all my grandchildren, and especially today, those 4, as we think about and talk about this issue. It's a very important issue, but I'm so grateful that mothers somewhere gave their children to our family to raise, and I'm so happy that they're a part of it. So I just wanted to add that comment. Thank you.
Is there further debate?
Madam President.
Senator Sousa.
Thank you, Madam President. I really have a lot of thoughts running through my head right now, and I may not make a lot of sense as I give my comments, but I'm compelled to make a statement because we've lived through a year of uproar and tumultuous times, and often contradictions, hypocrisy, contradictions. How could one issue be so discriminatory and another issue be in conflict? And so when I hear folks on the opposite side of the issue here talk about the fact that perhaps this life growing within the mother is not really a person, is not really human, is not really something to be called a child, and yet in the news, in our culture, we say we still have a problem with slavery, we still have people that are not being treated well, and yet we deny the humanity of the life that is growing within us as a mother. I will tell you, having experienced that miracle 4 times, there is no doubt that that is a human baby that is growing within you. And as my colleague in the next desk said, when you hear that heartbeat at the doctor's office, it is a reality. There's no doubt. And yet in this COVID situation, just to mix up my thoughts a little more, in this COVID situation, we're told follow the science. Follow the science. We have to just make our decision based on empirical science. And yet the science is clear that life begins at conception. And the science is clear that this is a human growing. And for us to deny that is to ignore science and to say, and to try to blame that on some religious belief, which is not a negative. It can be, that is a wonderful positive thing, but to discount it, to say, well, there are different cultural, religious beliefs, and that's the only reason that we are opposed to abortion, that's not true. Science tells us that this is a human life. Whether or not we have the religious belief that is in line with anyone else's, that's a life, and our Constitution, as the good senator from 23 reminded us, our Constitution says we have an innate right to that life. And that is our job as the legislature to uphold that right. And I am happy that we are here to support this bill today. Thank you.
Is there further debate?
Madam President,
Senator Wintrow.
to debate in opposition to the bill.
Senator has the floor.
Yes, thank you. I want to focus on one thing today, but prior to that, I did want to address the good senator's comments. I don't think anyone, at least I'll speak for myself, I don't think anyone is saying that something is not human or lifelike. What we're saying is that a woman's life is also valuable, and our choice and our autonomy to our body is essential. And that when the government can interfere in my personal choice, and in fact, I should have put a photo on your desk today, the only way to detect the activity, the cellular activity at that early age is, as the senator from 11 said, is through technology. And as technology gets better and better, we can hear things going on. What that does require is the intrusiveness of a vaginal ultrasound, which is a wand about 15 inches long that is inserted into the vagina. Now, the reason I wanted to say that is because the problem that I have with the bill is the language on page 2 that purports to grant an exception for victims of rape, but requires a police report. Requires a police report. From the language of the bill, it says the woman has reported the act of rape or incest to a law enforcement agency and provided a copy of such report to the physician who has to perform the abortion. I can tell you, you all know, I think, that I have worked directly with victims of rape and sexual assault. It's not easy sitting next to someone who has just endured the most violent, traumatic event of their lives. So I have a lot of emotion about this because there are real unfortunate problems in this regard with the rape part of it. And I know this body has demonstrated compassion to rape victims. You've demonstrated it. In my 7 years, this body has, alongside of me, almost unanimously, in fact, passed legislation, 5 major pieces of legislation that has transformed how we do sexual assault kit evidence collection, tracking, and preservation. Inherent in that process is choice. And I know this body has compassion for victims of rape. And I do think, after what I share today, I hope that you will change your minds about this part of the bill, because it does inhibit and it does actually prevent, it goes against actually some laws that were set. And I guess I also want to mention, I know that compassion exists because 2 sessions ago I introduced a bill in a committee, and a senator in this body came to me afterward in deep emotion and thanks, because we had heard from a father whose 14-year-old girl, his daughter and her friend, were raped in a park here in Boise. And unfortunately, the girls weren't believed. The police went on record that they were not believed, and the father was beside himself, to the point that 15 years later he called me in tears on the phone to say, I thought we had solved this problem. He came and he testified and he shared the story of this rape. Now, unfortunately, too, one of the girls is no longer with us. She committed suicide. I mean, I want you to think about them not being believed, the trauma they experienced being attacked. The same man who actually attacked them, it was proved later, murdered someone on the Greenbelt a week later. Now, this bill basically would require these folks to make sure they had a police report to take to the doctor if they wanted to get an abortion. A 14-year-old girl. After enduring this trauma, let's imagine these same girls, they have to go to the police, get the report that didn't capture their experience favorably. Now they have to carry that to a physician to read and not maybe want to share. I want you to think about the trauma they're experiencing as well as the father and the mother. Now, when you read the bill, it says you got to take the police report. We think that's probably a pretty easy process, but it's really quite difficult to get a police report during an active investigation. I know this from experience. And police records are exempt from disclosure. Madam President, permission to read from Idaho Code 74105.
Having properly identified the source, the senator may read.
Thank you, Madam President. 74105 is the code that deals with records exempt from disclosure, law enforcement records, investigatory records of agency, etc. Section 1 says investigatory records of law enforcement agency as defined in Section 74101 are exempt. And in that definition, subsection 6 and 74101 says, and I quote, investigatory record means information with respect to the identifiable person, group or of persons or entities compiled by the public agency or independent public body, etc., for the investigating of a specific act. These are exempt from disclosure. And I have talked to a couple of people who have been able to get the record, get the report, but all the information is redacted. So then you can't even use it with the doctor. I can tell you in my time consulting with victims and working with them, I have never gotten a police report during an active investigation. And the unfortunate part about sexual assault investigations is that from the day of report to arrest, the average daily count is 87.5 days, almost 3 months to do a sexual assault investigation. That's well documented in a report that's on the Idaho State Police website, a victimization study that was commissioned by the Idaho State Police. So now, you can't get the report, you're wrestling with them to get it, and the legislation says report. It doesn't say a phone call, it doesn't say a note, it says a report. Now I can't get that. The father's wrestling with that, or the victim, and here time's passing. The trauma is increasing, right? Because now she is thinking about the fact that she's going through this process, and every time she thinks about it, it makes her skin crawl. I can tell you also, in my time working with victims, it was rare that somebody came and reported right after the crime. Happens much later. Why? Because victims are traumatized. They're upset. I mean, I want you to think about and imagine what it would be like to be raped. Your entire control taken over in the most intimate way. The tears, the fear, the shaking. I can't look at my friends. The isolation, the depression. This is the worst thing that can happen to somebody other than a murder. And in all that mess, someone might make it to somebody like me, and I might talk them through the situation. And what we do is called trauma-informed options counseling. We recognize the trauma people are facing, and we provide the options in front of them in a way that they can choose what to do. Never making that choice for them, ever, 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 because all their control has already been taken. And then she might decide, based on all the options, you could do police report, health care, you could get a kit collected. If you're a student, maybe student conduct, etc. We'll go through all that. And then she decides, maybe I won't report to the police right now, but I'll get that anonymous sexual assault kit done. Because I know then if I at least get that done, the evidence is preserved, and if I decide to make a police report later, it's there. And in fact, all the stakeholders I've worked with, law enforcement, prosecutors, defense attorneys, SANE nurses, you name it, all surround and come together to agree that victim-centered support service for rape victims is what we do. We let her make the choice, right? Because the trauma has already taken all her choice away. So now she decides she's going to go to the hospital and have the evidence collected, which this body has voted in support of, to hold it without doing a police report. But now if she is pregnant and she needs an abortion, she has to go report it to the police. Now, we may think that's an ethical dilemma. Just go there, report it, get your note. It's not going to be that easy, because this is the point that I think is finally the big problem with this bill, with the rape. It's not a rape exception. That if I have to go get the police report, we are now violating the Violence Against Women Act that was passed in 2005. And that act requires that states, as a condition of funding, must allow victims to receive medical forensic examination without having to report the crime to law enforcement. We did that nationwide, again, because we know that when you're in a state of trauma, you don't know what to do, but we know if we preserve the evidence, they might come back later and we might capture the perpetrator. At this point, this bill it prevents it, and it also interferes with millions of dollars that flow into this state to provide services for victims all over our state. The Violence Against Women Act, millions of dollars come to programs in all of our districts. And that is in jeopardy with this bill, because you have effectively put up a barrier that the rape victim cannot cross. That's a problem. I implore you, regardless of all the other things, that this bill cannot go forward for that reason. And I'm asking you, with the compassion I know you have in your heart for rape victims, to not put people through this nor jeopardize the very services that we provide. The state provides no funding for victim services in the state, not one penny. It all comes from federal dollars. The only state funds that we provide are the state funds that you voted for a couple years ago to pay for the rape kit. That's it. With that, Madam President and Senators, I would ask you to vote against this bill for at least that reason, and support a human being, a human life that is as valuable as any other. And if you have never known anybody to experience a rape and have to face those decisions, and then to think about having to jump through all these hoops to get an abortion when you are already traumatized, it's too much.
Is there further debate?
Madam President.
Senator Nye.
Thank you, Madam President. With respect, I rise in opposition to Senate Bill 1183. In my view, the bill is not the Idaho way. It was presented by some interest group from the East, I think, and took hold in over a dozen states essentially at the same time. In Idaho, we do our own things, write our own bills, and represent our own people. Financially, this bill has consequences, serious consequences. We may lose millions in Medicaid funding, and the cost to defend likely challenges here in our state will run in the hundreds of thousands of dollars, not to mention exposure to similar amounts should we not prevail. As to the likelihood of upholding the bill, we can look to the other Bible Belt states and others who have been pushing this in the legislature and in the courts and losing time after time. Here are some of the states, Madam President, where this has occurred, where they've lost or hasn't gone forward in the legislature. Alabama, Arkansas, Florida, Georgia, Iowa, Kentucky, Louisiana conditionally, Mississippi, Missouri, North Dakota, Ohio, Pennsylvania, Tennessee, and Wyoming. We can certainly wait, and it might be prudent. It might be prudent to see how others fare through the court system before we just follow suit. Our own Attorney General has weighed in on this, Madam President, and I'd like to refer to the opinion from our Attorney General dated today, April 6th.
Having properly identified the source, the senator may read.
Thank you, Madam President. The Office of the Attorney General says because this bill would become law at some unknown point in the future, it's impossible to opine, in other words, give an opinion, as to whether it would be found constitutional when it became effective. It goes on, Madam President, it says if Senate Bill 1183 were to become law tomorrow, it would almost certainly be found unconstitutional, this bill. This is because under the U.S. Supreme Court's governing jurisprudence, the state may not unduly burden a woman's right to obtain a pre-viability abortion. And it cites cases. A ban on all abortions after a fetal heartbeat is detected would prevent almost all pre-viability abortions and thus would likely be found unconstitutional. Madam President, for us to deal with this, given the cost and the history of lack of success by other states, I would hope that those who wish to conserve our time, our resources, and the hundreds of thousands of dollars, taxpayer dollars too, that we'd all just think a little bit more and a little bit longer about supporting the bill at this time, and we should wait. I think that might be the Idaho way. Thank you.
Is there further debate?
Madam President.
Senator Groh.
Madam President, thank you for the ability to talk to this. This is not about money. This is about a right to life. As I think about over the history of civilizations throughout the world, when a civilization comes to the point where it destroys its own children, it's crossed a barrier that is difficult to ever come back. I've had the opportunity, responsibility to visit with many women over the years that have had abortions performed. And it's one of the heartaches that they have a difficult time ever getting over, whether they be I remember one that was 84, in later years in their 60s. It's something that haunts them throughout their life. Now, that's a choice. I understand that's their choice if they choose to do that. But there's another choice, and that's the right to life that I think is inalienable in our Constitution, that everybody has the right to life, to be born into this world. And this is an opportunity to make a policy statement by the state of Idaho that we speak for the unborn and those who cannot speak for themselves. And we're willing to go on record that that's something that should be done. And I also mentioned that I appreciate my little grandson, who's 6 years old, who is adopted, and I'm grateful that his mother made the decision not to have an abortion. Grateful that we have him in our family. And there are lots of families looking for the opportunity to have children. And we're grateful for Patty Ann Lodge for coming forth from District 11 and bringing this legislation. And we commend her for that, and I support it. Thank you.
Is there further debate? Hearing none, Senator Lodge is recognized to close debate.
Thank you, Madam President. I'd like to begin by thanking the senators from 16, 23, 17, 22, 24, 4, 19, 29, and 14, and I hope I didn't miss any of you. This has been a long journey for me, when I became involved in this issue. And part of the reason that I became involved was I received an email, and I spent the last 2 weeks looking for the email from this young lady. I had 20,000 emails that I was trying to get through, and I spent the whole recess looking for this one email. Haven't found it yet. I have about 7,000 more to go through. But this young 14-year-old girl so beautifully wrote to me about how she thanked her birth parents and her adoptive parents for giving her the opportunity for life. She's a junior in high school, homeschooled, only 14 years old at this time, but has such a depth of perception and knowledge and joy in her heart. And the thoughts that someone like her might be not given the opportunity for life has really affected my life. During the recess, I heard a song from Les Mirabes, and it's called Empty Chairs and Empty Tables. And it's real moving. It's about the French Revolution, and it's about the fellows who were sitting at a table planning for life after the revolution. And I thought about that, and I thought about the empty chairs and empty tables, and the empty places, maybe in this Senate chambers, in our courts, in our teaching programs, maybe astronauts, maybe president or governors of our states. The opportunities that those who have no ability to speak for themselves would not be given because the fact that their lives would be terminated. I wouldn't be able to answer all everyone. It was kind of difficult right here to hear some of your comments. But as for the trigger bill, if any U.S. appellate court upholds these laws, then this law would go into effect. But in the meantime, we wouldn't be expending any resources. A woman's life is valuable, and if they're in a traumatic situation, we need to reach out to them with all more love and support. And today's law enforcement have specially trained people to counsel those who have been in traumatic situations. And we also have our crisis centers and other places that do the research and help these people. No one is required to report a rape, but it is the way that if you want to have an abortion, after a heartbeat is detected, and a heartbeat can be detected by a stethoscope on the outside of your body, you would have to report. And there is no conflict in this legislation with the Violence Against Women Act. Good senators, thank you for listening to this long debate. Thank you for bringing your thoughts on this very important issue to the floor of the Senate. And with those comments, Madam President, debate is closed. Thank you.
Debate being closed, the question is, shall Senate Bill number 1183 pass the Senate? The Secretary will call the roll.
Eigenbrod, Anthon, Baer, Bayer.
Madam President, 60 seconds.
Senator Baer has 60 seconds.
Thank you, Madam President. I chose to take 60 seconds because I didn't think I could hold myself together any longer than that. The problem I have with this bill is that it does not go as far as I would like to see. Every life is important. A woman's life is important. but that does not give her the right to choose to commit murder. Abortion is murder. This senator supports the bill and votes yes.
Senator Bayer votes aye.
Burton Shaw, Cook, Crabtree, Den Hartog, Grow, Guthrie, Harris, Hyder, Johnson, Lakey, Lee, Lent, Lodge, Martin, Nelson, Nye, Patrick, Robbie, Rice, Ricks.
60 seconds.
Senator Ricks has 60 seconds.
Yes, thank you, good senators. I stand in support of this. I stand for the unborn. I think our unborn are precious. It is difficult, sometimes scary when a baby's born. We have to trust in God to support us and help us. I know with our 5 children, it was scary. It was difficult. There was a financial burden that I worried about. But also, I believe that God gives us a strong desire to keep the human race going through the desires that we have. And because of that, it does garner some responsibility on our part. And I think it's important that we do support life and that this is a good thing. And I ask support. I vote yes on it. Thank you.
Senator Ricks votes aye.
Riggs, Souza, Stennett, Thane, Vick, Wardingle King, Winder, Wintrow, Woodward, Zito,
Roll call shows 28 ayes, 7 nays, 0 absent and excused. A majority having voted in the affirmative, Senate Bill number 1183 is passed the Senate. Is there a correction to the title? Hearing none, the title is also approved, and Senate Bill 1183 will be transmitted to the House of Representatives.